Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. I'm so excited tonight to welcome you to the Cash Out broadcast tonight. Super excited to be here with our amazing special guest who my wife speaks so highly of, uh, Dr. Isia Mornes. And so we're here tonight to share a little financial wisdom with you. She's going to give us some perspective from the psychology of how we think so that we can become better with our money. And then I'm going to interject a few financial wisdom, few nuggets, and we're going to just really try our best to hold this broadcast to 30 minutes. But when you have two amazing people full of energy, full of joy and knowledge, I can't make any promises. But I'm excited tonight. I'm going to be taking a few cues from my latest book, Financial Freedom, A New Beginning. And this book is an amazing book that I poured a lot of passion and joy into. Again, you can get it at Amazon.com, Barnes and Noble. You can get it. And if you've got Amazon, I think if you spend up to $25, I think you can even get it free shipping. So I'm excited. This book will bless you. Go out and get it. Go out and get it, and go out and get it. But let me now introduce our esteemed guest, Dr. Isia Mornes, and she's going to share a little bit about who she is, and then we're going to get started with the show. So the floor is yours, Doc.
Thank you, Tony. Well, first of all, I want to congratulate you on such a needed book. It's such a blessing that God gave you the gift to write the book. It's such a necessity in our day and time, but also it's such a necessity for the generations coming after us. So thank you so much. And second, I appreciate the narrative that you're providing this evening. My name, again, is Dr. Isia Mornes. I am the founder of Trinity Cross Ministries Counseling Center, Biblical Institute, Network Services as well. And I also live in the DFW area. That's the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I am a Christian-based counselor. Virtually 100% online. We provide all of our services as well. We also are global. We can provide therapy globally. We are nationwide, which is a blessing that God has blessed us with this year. I am also a mother myself. I have a daughter. She lives in Houston, Texas. She's 35 years of age. I also come from a very small family. I have a beautiful mother. I lost two dads about a couple of years ago, but they live dear in my heart. I have an older sister. I'm the youngest of three. I have a special personal angel in heaven, my middle sister. I lost a middle sister about 35 years ago, but she's an angel now. I'm also excited about the narrative this evening because I believe that financial stress can lead to many different problems in a person's life from a therapeutic standpoint, pardon me, and we'll be addressing that today. So I'm really excited about the narrative of dealing with and correlating stress, anxiety, depression, even suicide, in some cases, homicide, when it comes to matters of financial situations. So, Tony, I'm excited. And I want the audience to know that they're very blessed with the information that you're going to provide with them this evening. And I just appreciate the golden nuggets that you have blessed everyone with by writing down the wisdom of dealing with financial freedom.
So thank you so much,
You're
Dr.
welcome.
Morris. Thank you so much. And what a profound life that you've lived in such a short time, and all of the
Thank
love
you.
and the people that care deeply for you and the people you care deeply for. It shows in that smile. So
Thank
Uh,
you.
they're all blessed to have you. Tonight,
Thank you.
our topic is stop settling and change your money DNA. Change your money DNA. I think we've all become accustomed to that the aspect of DNA being biological, things we're
Yes.
born with, things that are carried from one family member to the next. But one of the things that I have found is that you can also have a money DNA, things that you
Yes.
learn and that are passed down from mother and father and people who have great influence in your life. So, the way you saw money handled when you were a child is vital to your psyche. And I think Doc is going to talk to us a little bit about that as it directly relates to how you handle your money today. We have all been passed down what I like to call a money DNA, and
Mm.
building a positive relationship with money is vital. The way you see money and feel about money can be the difference between a successful, happy life and a miserable one.
Oh,
One of the most important things, hear me out when I say this, one of the most important things we can do regarding our relationship with money is to be careful how we even speak about it, to be careful by how because what we speak is really a direct correlation to our minds and what we're thinking. And if there's negative words coming, we're probably having negative thoughts. And if we're having negative thoughts about money, it's probably going to lead to negative behavior. So I'm going to drill down to the expert that we have on the phone, Dr. Morris. And, one of the things I talk about is cognitive overload. Too much on our minds impairs our ability to make decisions and can lead us to choose, the simplest, but not always the best options. So when being that you are a licensed therapist, what behaviors or things you think, Dr. Morris, can we put in place to help support cognitive overload?
Yes, Tony, that's a great question. And when we think about cognitive overload, there's a few aspects of cognitive overload. We can be overloaded by technology and the impact of technology. We can be overloaded cognitively by learning. We can be overloaded, environmentally, all of the many different things that are going on around us. So some of the support systems that we can put in place to avoid cognitive overload, they're simple. And I'm going to keep it simple, Tony, very practical. We can close or shut off some distracting applications on our computer. And we can set the notification as to what notifications we want to be alerted by. Phones as well, we can set up our notifications on our phone to not be disturbed. We can use the wonderful feature, do not disturb on our phone as well. We can switch off those notifications as well. So we can turn them off, or we can select as to when we would like to be notified. And bucket your email correspondence. Not many people use this feature, but instead of checking our emails, every second, every minute, multiple times a day, we can click on do not disturb, and we can decide on when we want to schedule checking our emails, especially personal emails. Now at work, I know it's different.
Right.
At work, we have to check our emails a lot more periodically versus non-work emails. But for personal emails, we can decide to limit checking those emails perhaps on our lunch break or on a brief 15-minute break or after work instead of throughout the day as well. We can stay off of personal social media, news sites, and other temptations as well. We can save visiting those sites perhaps for a lunch break instead of several times throughout our work day or several times throughout our day during the week or when we're supposed to be just relaxing. We can utilize minimalism. I love this one. We can minimize things around our desk so that we won't be so preoccupied cognitively with what's going on around us. We can avoid multitasking. Now, I know this is hard at work, but
Right.
Tony, statistics shows that when we're multitasking, we definitely are overloading. I recommend,
Absolutely.
if an individual does not have to overload themselves with multitasking, and if they can decide and schedule one task at a time and focus on that task instead of multitasking, it helps to prevent cognitive overload as well. Now, again, I know this is not always practical at work, but if it is doable, I
Yeah.
recommend doing it. Utilizing documentation. We oftentimes are writing down a little bit of everything that depends on the generation that we come from. But the way our technology is set up today, technology can do a lot of work for us. So instead of jotting down or utilizing a lot of documentation, try using some electronic reminders and electronic filters to rely on documentation. Taking notes, shorthand versus longhand. Taking routine breaks at work is important, especially whether you're at work face to face or remotely working or working a hybrid schedule. Take
Absolutely.
those 1 hour breaks. If your job gives you two 15-minute breaks or two 10-minute breaks, take those breaks. Those breaks are
Absolutely.
not just to take a break, but those breaks are for recovery. Mental recovery, emotional recovery, spiritual recovery, environmentally recovery, and so on. And of course, emotional recovery. But Tony, the list can go on and
No,
on and on.
you answered it, because one of the things that the reason I ask about that is, in the book I talk about the numerous distractions. People would
Yes,
think that that has a lot to do with money, but it really does, because there are so many different things that we allow to distract us from focusing on something so vital and important as money. And there's always something new we're involving ourselves in, something new we're adding to our task list. One of the things that I said in the book, Our Financial Freedom: A New Beginning, on page 19, I said this in the book. In life, there are so many paths we can take with finances. Some paths are good and some paths are bad.
hmm,
But it is still each person's choice to take the path they want in life. Life will test us whether we to see where we are in our relationship with money, and if we can handle more. Here we go. As soon as we think we're on the right path, things will begin to happen to try and distract us. It is important that we are resolute in letting nothing get us off the path to financial freedom. And that is why I ask that, because there are so many people, Dr. Moore, that I've spoken to that said, Tony, I really want to get my finances together, but there's just so much that I'm doing. And I always say that you've got to be willing to shed some of the things that are getting in the way of financial freedom. And you said it so well: prioritizing what's most important, taking the
yes,
time to say, I'm going to set aside time so that I'm available, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, to deal with my money, so that at the end of the day, I am ready for that financial freedom. And I just believe, Dr. Morris, that money and psychology walk lock and step. That if you have the right mindset, you have the right psychology around money, then the behavior will follow your psychology. Talk to me a little bit about this idea of optimism and overconfidence that we can have. And I'll talk to you a little bit about what I mean. You know, failure to remove the rose colored glass uh, for objective assessments of our financial matters. And I'm sure as a a licensed person, you'll probably word it a little different. But you know, this idea of not dealing with the way things really are, but
Yes.
coloring it the way we want it to be. Talk to us a little bit about that.
All right. Well, thank you, Tony. The optimism versus overconfidence when it comes to finances, they're really related. You know, people like to think that they are separate and like to put them in two categories, but there's some correlation between the two. And how the question is how are they correlated? So overconfidence in terms of finances results in underestimation of maybe future risk,
Yes.
the riskiness of future cash flow, while over optimism leads to an overestimation of future positive outcomes and the future returns of someone's finances. For example, we can use an individual that has a tendency to gamble. We often find those individuals are very optimistic but
Yes.
overconfident as well. So when a person is overly confident and they figure that they know the outcome, what typically happens is there's a recycle of behavior, and almost always there's a negative result. Why? Because the end in mind is not always practical. And so one of the things that we have individuals facing is lack of judgment,
Yes.
lack of planning, and lack of being realistic when it comes to being optimistic, or when it comes to being confident when it comes to managing money. And
Yes.
let's face it, Tony, how many of us have gone through some financial planning training, financial management training? You're absolutely right. You made a very important point earlier when you mentioned that most of us have learned how to manage money or how not to manage money
Yes.
by our most immediate environment growing up.
Yes.
Either our parents managed money very well, or our parents didn't manage money very well, or we had one to manage money well, or we had one didn't, and we saw some opposition, which could bring us to some very confusing messages in our lives and so forth. But on the other hand, Tony, we do also have some people, probably like yourself, who God gave an innate ability to be able to financially manage money very well. It's a gift for some people.
That's right.
Some people do not have to go to any financial training. It's just a gift that
Yeah.
God gave them. For example, I was counseling this one young lady, and she was telling me about her childhood. And when she was very, very young, her dad used to give she and her siblings allowance. Now, there's three personalities. So the oldest sibling believed in living for the NOW, the now, and just would spend all of her allowance immediately, never saving. The middle child would share her allowance sometimes, but she would spend rapidly like her oldest sibling. The
Right.
youngest sibling had a tendency to accumulate her allowance, save it in a, back in the day, we call them what, handkerchiefs, you know?
Yeah.
And she would put her money in the handkerchief. She would put it under clothing, scoot it over in a corner, and she would allow it to accumulate. So this was an innate ability in the youngest being a client that I worked with before. Now, who do you think the siblings went to when they ran out of money for something as simple as bubble gum,
Right.
candy or what have you? The two oldest siblings would go to the youngest sibling and ask for a loan or ask to be given some of the savings of the younger siblings. Now, this youngest sibling, again, she was the youngest, but being about 8 or 7, It had to be a natural, innate ability
Yeah.
that God put in that child, because that child, from my understanding, never had anyone to talk to her about finances, what to do with money, how to regard money, the purpose of money. But what's interesting is that innate ability never changed for that
Right.
individual. That individual actually grew up with the mindset of, I have to save money. Money is just not for the now. It also impacts my now and my tomorrow, my future. And it can dictate my world. It can dictate my future. So when you made that point earlier about how people regard money, is it overconfidence or is it optimism?
Yeah, and I'll tell
It's
you, thank
important.
you so much for sharing that story.
You're
I'll
welcome.
tell you one of the things that you spoke about is when it's not your gifting, move out of the way. If that's
Absolutely.
not your, if it's not natural for you, move out of the way. Employ people with the experts. If you don't have the full understanding, don't be bullheaded. You know, one of the things I've found when I'm counseling people who are overly optimistic is one of the things they become overly optimistic about is time. They always assume they've got time, you know, and so they're just confident. But one of the things I tell people every time I'm in a session like that is, but you don't control time. So you only have the moment you're in. And so whatever moment you're in, that's the moment you have to have the right behavior and the right attitude. And there's nothing wrong with being optimistic. There's nothing wrong with being confident, but don't be overly optimistic. Don't be overconfident about things you can't control. Remember, you're in the moment now. This is the moment you make the right behaviors so that if a moment comes that you need those right behaviors, financial behaviors to pay off, then guess what? You have prepared for that. In chapter 20, I write, you know, when we are grateful just for life and the many blessings it has afforded us, our attitude about money is different. We don't simply see money as a means of arrogance and perching ourselves above others. We see how blessed we are to have money and the opportunity to have wealth. And thus, we don't abuse it. Perhaps that's why so many people abuse money and cannot seem to find wealth and financial freedom. They are not grateful and humble in spirit. And this leads to pride and waste, which are two ways of ending up poor. Gratitude is the state of being appreciative for what we have and taking care of it. And that leads me, Doc, to this idea of, you know, I'm sure you've dealt with people who are very indulgent. You know, they want what they want, when they want it, how they want it, where they want it. And one of the things that I've found is that one of the fastest way to not building wealth is having a need for instant gratification. This indulgence in a thrill today over a larger potential payoff in the future. So
Mhm.
this is one of my favorite behaviors to address for people of African American descent. So let's talk about baby steps to addressing this just in everyday behaviors when you find people who are very, I guess, spontaneous. They do what they want to do without thinking about the outcome. Can you talk to us a little bit about how do we curtail that and be okay with not gaining everything we want now for future gratification?
Yes, yes, Tony, thank you. Well, a few practical tips that come to mind is just automatic savings.
Mm,
Automatic savings. Now, when we talk about savings, there are different types of savings. There's your emergency uh, savings. There's short-term savings. There's long-term savings as well, and of course, there's investments as well. When it comes to shopping, simple. write down your shopping list and stick to your shopping list. Stick to your shopping list. Sleep on the big purchases. Sleep on the big purchases. So where there's a big purchase concern, take a sleep break on it. Take a time out. If you're shopping, if it's a small purchase and one has a tendency to shop, spontaneously, postpone it for 15 minutes. In about 15 minutes, most people are not in that same location to shop. And so they're usually going to find themselves in a different location. And so postpone the interest of making an instantaneous purchase for 15 minutes. Give yourself monthly money. That's called an allowance. It's called a budget as well. Give yourself a monthly allowance and stick to it. Invest your money. If you don't know how to invest your money, Tony, you're here. You are a great person that our audience can contact and get some investment advice as well. Create a vision board. Most people create a vision board for their lives and for their goals, but I'm talking about a money vision board.
And
Create a money vision board. Yes.
Speaking of that, we are very soon, I'm going to be presenting a class on that. So it's interesting that you would say that. So that's good because I'm actually setting that up right now. And so thank you for mentioning that.
You're welcome.
Because we got a few minutes now.
Yes.
But I want to go to page 22 in the book. And
Okay.
it's the section where it says take action. And here's what I have. I say, decide on the life you desire and walk in it. Don't be distracted by things that don't bring you a healthy financial return. Remember, the path you take in your financial life is your own. Only you can decide which way you will go, the path of financial freedom or the path to financial imprisonment. And then I'll end it with this. And you touched on this, Dr. Moore. So this is amazing how we are so connected on this. I end it with this. If you're struggling to make good financial decisions, find someone who is making good financial decisions and make them your new friend.
Yes.
And as we come to an end, one of the things that I hope people learn tonight is that you're going to hear a lot in your lifetime about how to handle finances. And you're going to hear people say they're going to give you a budget. And you're going to hear people on TikTok say you need to invest. And you're going to hear people in different arenas give you different tools. But one of the things that I want you to understand is that and not just myself, but Dr. Moore's too, if we give you all of the tools, but you don't have the right psychology, the right mindset, the right thought process on how to handle money, you're more likely to fail. But if we can work with your psychology, the way you think about money, the way you envision money, the way you see money, now, so as a man thinketh, so is he. And that's one of the things that's very important. And Dr. Morris, if you would just give us 1 minute on how important is it in what you do every day to help people psychologically, how important is it just the way people think?
It's extremely important, Tony. One of the statements I make to almost all of my clients is your choices create your future. Dealing with money management, the way we perceive money, you're right. It has everything to do with how we think about money. And how we think about money creates our future. The choices that involve our money creates our future. And if we want financial freedom, we have to make the choices to create a future for financial freedom. If we want to be financially incarcerated the rest of our lives, as you mentioned earlier. We will make choices in our lives to keep us financially incarcerated. I like the idea of financial freedom, Tony. You know,
Yes,
$100,000, it may not seem like a lot of money to some people, but I remember when I first came across the idea of even thinking about the idea of saving my first $100,000.
yes,
And I thought, well, how do you do that? What does it take to do that?
yes,
A budget.
yes,
Second, knowing that it is doable.
yes,
It is doable.
yes,
And second, what are the resources that it's going to take to do it? And what is the commitment that it's going to take to do it?
yes,
And so this all goes back to what we think about money, uh, how we think about money, and what we can do with money, and what the purpose of money is. Do we look at it as a seed that we can plant, and as a result, it can grow? Or do we look at it as just an opportunity to use to give us pleasure?
yes.
Choices create our future. Financial choices create our future.
Wow. Listen, I'm just so thankful to have you on the Cash Out tonight, Dr. Morris. It has been
You're
a
welcome.
pleasure. It has been an amazing night, and you are a wealth of knowledge, joy, understanding, and wisdom. And we will have you back. Can you
Thank
share
you.
with people one more time what
Sure.
you do, who you are, and where they can contact you? And then I'll close it out.
Sure. Again, I'm Dr. Isia Mornes, certified therapist in the DFW area nationwide. We provide services as well. If anyone wants to contact me, my phone number is 214-664-2292. 214-664-2292. I can also be reached on Facebook under Trinity Cross Ministries as well. I can also be reached on LinkedIn as well under Isia Mornes as well, or Trinity Cross Ministries as well. And I can also be reached at Trinity Cross Ministries at protonmail.com. Trinity Cross Ministries at protonmail.com. Thank you, Mr. Tony. It's been a pleasure, and I am just so astounded by the wonderful knowledge that you've shared today. And in advance, I accept the invitation to return.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I can see out in cyberspace, we've got people saying thank you for what you shared. Someone said it was excellent. Someone said great session. And
Thank you.
I just want to say to you again, thank you so much, Dr. Morris. It was just an amazing collaboration. And to everyone else, I want to say thank you for joining us this evening. Don't forget to go out and get my new book, Financial Freedom, A New Beginning. It is at Amazon right now, Barnes and Noble. You can go out and get it. And I'm just telling you that a lot of the nuggets and the wisdom that you heard from myself and Dr. Morris is in this book. Look, buy a copy for a friend, buy a copy for someone who is struggling with the way they think about money. Matter of fact, buy a copy for that person who is always borrowing from you. Tell them I got a special gift for you. It's a book to change the way you think. And I just want to say thank you to everyone tonight. You can reach me at tonycash.org if you would like a private session, a group session, a church session, whatever it is, tonycash.org. And I want to say thank you again to Dr. Morris. Thank you again to everyone who joined us. And I'll end it with this. We're out and cash out. Have an
Yes.
amazing night. Goodbye.
Yes. Thank you all.
Bye.
Good night.